Today, we are talking about preparing for spiritually significant moments, which I don't think was very clear, but I think what we're going to try to do is talk about those big things that we do with kids. So whether it's like baptisms or communion or confirmation or funerals, I mean, they doesn't have to be formal or it doesn't have to be sacramental. Anything that is like a moment that you design, that is, whether it's a ritual, whether it's an encounter, whether it's something that you're like, okay, we're going to do this thing that we want to prepare kids for. Often we have a sort of preparation process that we put the kids on. And I think there's some really fun and cool ways of doing it. And so we're going to do this. I actually prepared slides. I'm not even sure if I'd count them as slides. Whatever I could whip together in 20 minutes because we're going to work it through. Because I think this is really important. I think we often feel the pressure of that when we're like, okay, and particularly in this pandemic season where we have been sort of not corporately together, we can sort of feel like it sort of builds up, right? Then we're going to do the big confirmation when everyone's together. We're going to, we have these funerals coming up, and we have these dedications, these moments where we want to prep the kids for it. And it can often dump on our shoulders, the preparation stuff. And so how do we do that? How do we prep these kids for it well in a way that holds them well and helps them spiritually encounter God? But also, how does it hold their families well, and to prep an entire family for a moment that they can hang on to that moment and momentum build on that is really, really important. Yes. So good to see you all. Okay, so let's get down to it because I don't want to take up all of your lunchtime. And as usual, ask questions, make your comments, concerns, ponderings, heresy flags, everything that you want to say in it all. And I'd love to catch up with that and see that and all sorts. So here we go. Okay, so with this stuff, I think it's really helpful, as with almost everything that I say, is to take like 14 steps back and really think about what we want to do. Because I think what happens is often we get given, here's communion, prep people for communion, and we go, okay, well, what do we want to teach them, and how do we do it in a creative way that won't make them hate this stuff? And or how do we do it in a fun way? And we sort of get directly into the how-tos super quick. And I think what can be really helpful is to back up a bit and to ask, what is the heart of what I want this preparation to provide? What is the heartbeat? My little hands. I think I can do it. I am very uncool. What is the crux, the heart, the actual cut everything else off of everything, the real sharp, the sharp point of what we want to equip and what we want to provide and what we want them to get at the end of this. And then we can design a program to get there. And I think often what happens is the heartbeat of what we're trying to equip is actually really smushy and muddly. And we're like, I want to prep them for communion, or I want to prep them for, baptism, or I want to prep them for this funeral. So their parent died, or their grandparent died. This is a big thing, and I want to prep them for it well. And we just sort of go, let's prep them. But I think when we really sharpen and get that heart really sharp of what we want to teach, then we can really shape something that's significantly impacting. So I made us a chart, everybody. We get to work through it together. Join me for my technical process. Share screen. I know, and it's the most unexciting thing ever. Those of you who've been doing lunch with Rachel's for a while, you know that I am passionate about printing out things and putting them on whiteboards and things. And my whiteboard is on the floor, which is why we haven't done whiteboards very much. And I will figure out how to do that. But two, like, we're used to a very low key. And so the fact that I'm about to put up a boring chart is going to be disappointing to everybody. It's okay. It's okay to experience that. Let's just embrace our upsetness. Move on. Okay, here we go. Our chart of this is, oh, I know, disappointing. What I really wanted to say in this was if we can get to the heartbeat of what we really want to teach, then we can expand. And so I just picked communion. You could do anything else. I suggest you make a little chart of whatever's on your heart. So, copy it down, take a screenshot. I don't know. However you want to do it. Ooh, maybe I should I had thought about it, I would have emailed it to my team so they could put it up and then you could download it and follow along. Well, anyways, it's not complex. So this is what I was thinking of in terms of the heartbeat, because often what we have is we are so vague about it that we actually create imprecise equipping. But for me, if we want to prep kids to do, say, communion, whether this is a formal structure that your church requires or not, uh, what I find really useful, and so put in the top communion, funeral, whatever you feel is a spiritually significant moment, your salvation talk, however you want to do it. And for me, particularly in those sort of traditions or almost ceremonies, what's really helpful is to prep kids in all these three areas. So for instance, with communion, I would suggest that we need to prep kids, well, for all these things, theologically, relationally, spiritual equipping, and practically. And so those are the things that I think about. What do I want to equip kids with? So for instance, if we're doing communion, I'm prepping kids for communion. Theologically, there's a bunch of stuff that I want kids to know. I'm now going to really loudly type on my computer. So for instance, I want them to know about grace. I want them to know about substitutionary atonement. I don't know. Sometimes I'm really feel like that's important. And I think depends on how hard you want to hit it. Grace, substitutionary atonement, but telling the whole story, like we talked about last night at Facebook Live, the whole story of the gospel so that they feel sort of positioned. That's what I theologically want them to know about it. Why communion? Yeah, that's an important one. Why communion, what it means, all that sort of theological stuff. But often we just sort of stop there. We're like, great, we want them to know it all in their heads. Tick, we've ticked the box now that they can do it. Now, sometimes we then skip to the practical stuff too. We go, okay, well, in the practical stuff, I want them to know how to feel confident. This is actually really important, the practical stuff, how they feel confident in what to do. Like, when do you stand up, and when you get released, and what do you do with your hands, and where you look with your eyeballs, and all that kind of stuff that often they just feel at a loss for. I want them to feel confident in what to do. I want them to have looked and touched the stuff before their first time. So often, like for communion, I'll let them touch all of the implements and the things so that they can see it and they can taste it for the first time. Sometimes we don't taste it depending on what tradition you're a part of. But I can say that it kind of tastes like this. And so it's wine. You might want to try it at home, sort of get non-stick so that they can get used to that taste of what it is, that it might not be the communion wine, but it might be a little bit of something, a different wine that is not blessed. They can get a taste of it, just so they can sort of feel comfortable physically in what's going to happen. But then sometimes we just stop there. And I think it's really important that we don't stop there, because for me, I also want them, oh, I realized that I keep forgetting that you're just genuinely just looking at a spreadsheet, right? Sorry. Because what I want them to do is I want them to have that theological foundation. I want them to have the practical foundation. But there are these two other ones in the middle that I want them to have. I want them to be relationally equipped and supported in their relationship with God, in their relationship with the congregation members, in their relationship with their parents. I want them to have a relational equipping as well. And I want them to have a spiritual equipping. If this is a spiritually significant moment, then it can't just be about the stuff that they know in their head and the practicals of how to get through it. For me, it's got to be about what new step are they stepping into spiritually, and what equipping do I need to give them to step into that new realm. So it could be that, whatever this next stage is, it's spiritually equipping them to not only take the step of the moment, but be equipped to continue on from that moment. So if we go back to our chart, I'll remember to keep coming out of it so you're not just looking at it all the time. Like relationally for communion, I want them to know how to feel connected to God. How do they like doing it? And so therefore, some of my sessions may need to be about helping them find their current communication with God and knowing that may change, and what are the other options of that. So feel connected to God. I want them to feel comfortable in their church community. And so for some kids, they are out the whole time. And so for me, sometimes if kids are out of the service the whole time, then they never feel connected to the community. And if for me, communion is about being a part of the body, then for me, they can't take communion until they feel comfortable as part of the body. So, some of my equipping is about figuring out, how do I help them feel connected? How do they get to know names? How do they get to be known? And that's part of my communion prep is helping them feel and know their place in the body. So back to the church. So in church and community, and to church leadership for me in the communion, sometimes, they've never had a conversation with the church, the big church leader before. And so, that's a huge gap. And for me, if they're going to be a part of the community, they've got to be part of feeling known and seen by the leadership as well. And so how do I build those relationships? And in spiritual equipping, if I think about communion, I want to help them be equipped to spiritually prepare themselves every time they go into a communion situation. How do they like stilling their hearts, or what do they like reminding themselves of? What is their pattern, so that they just don't come and go through a ceremony, but that they feel like, yeah, every time I come to communion, this is how I prepare my heart. This is how I like doing it. This is how I find God. I want them to feel equipped on how to handle their sin and shame, because sometimes kids, just go through the ritual, but I want them to know, when you feel this is how you come to God. This is how you feel free from it. And that's what we're celebrating in communion, is this grace and is this thing. And so I want them to feel equipped to that, to handle that with God in connection with him, so that they handle it in a way that is healthy and run towards him. So for me, when we get to that sort of thing, then I really know what I'm wanting to teach. I really go, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to prep these kids for communion because I want them to feel theologically and relationally and spiritually and practically prepped to do this. And so you can do that with communion, you can do that with baptism, you could do that with funerals. We could put this chart up and talk about theologically, what do I want them to know before they come to this funeral? How do I prep them for this moment where they're sitting there in this space, in this time we're going to a graveside? And what do I want them to be thinking about, feeling? How do I want them to relationally to be equipped to handle this with God? How do I prep kids to handle dealing with disappointment or dealing with anger with God, so that they feel equipped to that whatever they're feeling in that moment is okay? And going forward, how do I spiritually equip them to strengthen themselves in God or cry with God? How do I practically equip them to know what's going to happen, so that they're not worried about the practicalities of the experience, but they can focus on their spiritual experience? And this could just be, a half-hour conversation, or however you choose to do it. When you know the heart of what you're headed for, then you know what you want to do. Now, I would suggest that it's not enough that we just look at how we prep kids for these moments, because we're prepping families for these moments. We are trying to equip this child or young person, in terms of, if you have confirmation, if you have, sort of full immersion baptism, however you want to do it, there's a family. And if we believe that a child is wrapped within a family who is wrapped within an extended community, then we've got to equip those different realms. So I would suggest you just take a moment to jot down the parent, carer, extended family sort of view of that. And so if I go back to the chart, I just want to say, are we so proud of me using my screen? I know we're so not used to this, but I'm very proud of myself. Theologically, when I'm dealing with communion, what do I want parents to know? Well, primarily, I want them to know all the stuff, the same as above, which isn't necessarily a given. There are times where, we are dealing with parents who are new to faith, or who, just may not have really wrestled with some of these big ideas. And so sometimes, we're teaching kids stuff that the parents haven't had access to before. And so sometimes just in my head, I go, okay, theologically, I just want to make sure I am creating space for parents to explore these ideas, because at some point they're going to potentially have conversations with these kids. These kids will have been equipped in this and may want to have a conversation about it. And I want to make sure that parents feel comfortable in talking about this kind of stuff. Relationally, I want parents to feel that they have a community of other parents around them that they can talk to, that they can be connected to. Sometimes, for communion, this is their sort of first big sort of moments where they feel like they have to prep their kid for something formally, as opposed to the normal everyday parenting for faith stuff. And this is a great time to say, hey, as you help your kid take a next step, I just want you to know that you're not in this alone, and it's never designed to do this alone. I want to make sure it's a great moment that I can say, hey, I want to make sure that you're tied in so you don't feel alone in this. And I want parents to feel supported and seen by the congregation. For me, that's what I want. You may have totally different ones. Spiritually equipped. For parents, I want to make sure that they feel equipped to coach their kids in real time. There will be time that their kids don't want to take communion. There'll be times that their kids are annoyed, and there will be times their kids are messing around. There will be times that their kids are struggling with God. And I want to make sure that they, as we step into this new phase of life for them, I want to go, okay, I want to make sure parents feel equipped and not pressured that they have to make their kid perform communion, but that they know how to redirect and encourage and ask questions and support, that they have new coaching skills as they enter this new phase, whether it's just around the event, whether it's around the going forward, just an opportunity for that. And practically, sort of, I want parents to, feel comfortable with all the dates and the processes and how to get it done and where their power is. This can often, when we look at things like communion, that often the church puts on almost a thing that the church does centrally, what parents can feel is disempowered. And I want to make sure that practically parents feel empowered in it, that it's their choice that it's going to happen now, that they can go on their own timing, that I'm constantly ensuring within myself and within them that they understand that they are the primary disciplers, and I see that and support them in that and honor that in their choices so that they feel powerful within that. And so for me, that's the sort of parent thing. And so you can see as we do this, it begins to shape how you approach something, because you think, I know exactly what I want the kids to do. I know exactly how I want to empower these kids. I know what I want to empower these parents in. Now, sometimes I did add a congregation tab to my chart because we're creating a culture around these parents and kids. And so it can be really helpful just in our heads to think through things like, what is the messaging I want to be constantly saying about this spiritual experience from the front? Do we need to be saying, we love that people of all ages can come to God and communion? What is your phrasing around that theologically? What is your phrasing around that? What is your phrasing around that theologically? So it could be, phrasing from the front during other times. Are we seeding that stuff in? Relationally, are we training congregation and creating space for congregation connection? Proactively, are we spiritually equipping our congregation to embrace and support families in this time? Are we practically, giving clues for congregation members of how they can make space, how they can welcome and tie in new families to this thing? Are we doing that? And that just sort of helps me so that I'm not setting my families up to fail when they're like, I want to connect, and my whole congregation is like, no. So when we look at this, now whatever this is, communion, funerals, whatever it is, when you spend time with yourself, you don't have to work through the chart, but just spend time with yourself, really refining the sharpness of it. Then we can figure out the how. Then we can figure out the how do we provide that. And I think once you get a really sharp heart of what you want, really, cutting off all the faff and the fluff and go, no, this is what my congregation, these children, these young people in this season need, and what these parents need, you're going to be making some really great choices to take the next steps in that. And then after that, then we bring out our IKEA. And if you're new to this, I'm going to take a little sip. If you're new to this idea of IKEA, talk about it a lot, about not being the dentist, which is saying I'm the dentist, and I know what's right for your choices, and you need to do it my way, and I'll fix it if you don't. But to which is not, I'm saying I don't want to impinge upon dentists. Dentists don't say that, but sometimes we perceive dentists to be more judgmental than they actually are. But I think there's something about being IKEA, which is saying, look, there are lots of different routes in. Feel free to pick what you like and what you don't like. And there's lots of different ways your home can look. And we're here to help facilitate you finding it for yourself. And I find that if I provide only this welcome, walk through this procedure to be communionized, it feels quite rigid. It feels quite exclusionary. Because we're saying there is only one way to walk through this process. And I don't think there is. I think there's a lot of different ways that we can equip things. And if we do that, then we can help families walk this journey together. So for me, second slide, yes, for you, anything. There's this part. This is the IKEA approach. There's this heartbeat at the middle that you've already refined, that you've already decided, and that there is something that you know what you want to do. But there's lots of different routes in. And often what I do is I try to do all of these, but you don't have to do all of these. It's completely up to you. But for me, I try to produce lots of different routes in always, because people are different and in different seasons of life. And so for me, there is a way of I don't try to provide. Sometimes I have to provide all of this. This is the one that if I can get out of, I do, because one, I'm lazy, and two, I feel like it's the least necessary. So I don't know if you can see what I'm clicking on, but the church formal, the sort of I will now run a preparatory course thing, is the one that I feel can be dropped, because you can do it with parents, you can do it in community. So that's the one that I tend to try to make redundant in my church communities. But sometimes you need it, depending on the kind of church that you have and the way that you do it. And it's actually a really great opportunity if you want to do it in an all-together kind of way. And so I would suggest that if you're doing a church formal, if you are formally prepping a family to do something, rather than taking the kid away and prepping that kid, I would suggest that you come up with some way to do it together. And so we talk a lot about equipping parents and kids all together, because if you look at the chart, there's lots of things we want the kids to know and lots of things that we want the parents to know. And actually doing it together is way easier. So you could say, you know what we're going to do is we're going to do, 3 church lunches where we're going to come together and do this thing. Or if we're still on Zoom, to say, we are here and we're going to come on Zoom, we're going to do these lunches and we're going to just talk about this, and then we're going to try this at home. You can create the sort of thing to do it together, to create that language, to create that thing. You can feel free to do that. I would suggest also, though, that you create a springboard for parents. And in It Takes a Church to Raise a Parent, I just waved something at you. And It Takes a Church to Raise a Parent, there's a whole section, I think, on springboard resources, which is a way of setting up parents to get over the hump of going, so, ever wonder about communion? Well, let me tell you. It gets them over the awkwardness of it and creates a structure for them to still do all of the creating windows and the teaching and the training and the equipping without it being heavy on them. And there's a way of doing it. So you sort of take them to the point that they can then take it from there. So it could be things like, one church I worked on, I sort of made a little booklet that I was like, hey, why don't you watch a movie, one of these 6 or 7 movies that really, I think, illustrate grace. You may have a different one that illustrates grace better than this. Great. Pick a movie that you think illustrates grace really well and watch it with, however you like watching movies, and then talk about what grace is and who is grace and why grace worked and why it didn't work, and just have a really interesting conversation about grace, and then talk about Jesus's grace and how that looks in your life, and create a window into a time where you needed God's grace and what that looks like and how you felt, and just to sort of give them a springboard. I'm not telling them what to say. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm saying this is a great opportunity. Here, pick it and run with it and feel free. And I don't need you to come to any conclusion. I don't need you to produce any work that proves to me that you did it. I'm saying this is a great springboard in to talking about this theologically. And if you're not sure, let me know and I can give you some more detailed stuff. And so I will have parents come back and say, I don't know how to do that. And I'll be like, well, here's 5 questions to get you started to extend that springboard a bit farther, rather than give them the whole thing. And I just help them go through it. So create a springboard is another way to have it. So in your church, you can say, great, we can gather together and do it side by side. Or you know what, if you want to do it in your own time, you're the parent, feel free to do that. Here's the different things that can springboard you into all of the ways of prepping your kid really well for this. And to produce that is easy and simple depending on what your chart looks like. Then for me, there is this parent equipping thing. And for me, that sort of sometimes comes down to what parents need to be equipped in. Things like, how do you know when your kid is ready for this next spiritual moment? That's a massive question parents have. And often we don't equip them to know that. And so to say, hey, parents, here's ways of talking about baptism. And why don't you share your story and drop it in and teach them how to lay foundations for these big spiritual moments. And how do they know when you're ready? And how do you ask your kid if they're ready? And how do you have those conversations and know when to take the next step? That's a big thing that parents need equipped on. And often we just leave them to it and say, when you're ready for this moment, let me know, wink. And they don't know what to do. And so how do we equip them to be those people? How do we help them, show them what they're looking for and questions to ask and ways of poking, prodding, and feeling like have they had windows into it? And if not, source a window for it, and just helping them understand things like, how do they know that their kid is ready? How to cope with it if they feel like their kid never wants it? And all of those things are just coming alongside of them and saying, hey, we're here for you, and we're here to help you see it and think about it and ponder these things. And then the last thing that I would suggest is congregation communication, in the same way that we talked before, is what are we saying from the front about these spiritual moments? How are we celebrating them, or how are we foreshadowing them? How are we making space for them so that there isn't just one process, but of celebrating it, in private and in public, and ensuring that the whole community, that we are a culture of people who understand how all of this works, not just that it's this siloed thing that happens to children and good for you, but that it is a part of the whole story of the church, can be really helpful in shaping that. And so for me, that's how we prepare for spiritually significant moments. We get that sharpness of heart, and then we create IKEA structures around it, so that no matter how you want to come in, if a parent wants to chew over for 2 years whether or not their kid is ready for a spiritually significant moment, and then they think, well, actually, I want to handle this spiritually significant moment at home, then it's like, great, do you feel like you have everything you need for that? Great, congratulations, go for it, or if they feel like, oh no, there's a funeral crisis and I just need some stuff to get my kid through it, and I can go, great, here's some springboard resources to get you through it. And once every 6 months, we gather families together after church to talk about death and grief and things, because we know that is a regular part of life, and we provide it all together. Or you can feel free to grab this stuff that I have for you, do it on your own, or here's some equipping stuff to just get your brain thinking about it. To constantly give them those different ways means parents can go, okay, I can find whatever is right for whatever kid I'm doing this with and find it. So here we go. Oh, look, my team made you one. So evidently they're going to post up a little Word doc with the chart for you. Teamwork. Fantastic. So that's all I really wanted to talk through was this thing, but I really wanted to give a good chunk of time for us to handle questions and situations you're in and wrestlings together for things that you're facing and worried about. And maybe I can input into that. So please feel free to type in those questions and comments and insights and things that you've done that are helpful to others that you think, so that we can really chew this over. What situations are you looking at prepping for, and how can I help you do that? I don't normally pray for you. Oh, we have a question. I'll pray for you at the end, because we've got a question coming in. So as this question gets handled, feel free to type in any other stuff that you have. I am sensing within our families that there's a great deal of emotional and spiritual fragility as a result of the pandemic. There seems to be a need for family pastoral care. Have you had any suggestions of how we could support families in this? Yes, absolutely. We did a whole session of this on it. My team will post a link for you up here. We did a whole session on how to support families who are struggling. I think it was a good at least half hour on it. And so if you go access that, there were lots of sort of specific ideas of delving into how to help those families that are particularly emotional, particularly spiritually fragile, and how we can get in there and connect and pastorally support them and build those relationships. There's a whole chunk on that. When it comes to this sort of thing, I would say that this is a sort of different response to that same problem. So that session is all about the sort of pastoral care of families and how we sort of hold them well. I would say that, when we're coming here and we're looking at spiritually significant moments of coming out of lockdown, there may be, you may want to say, well, look, we've just got a really fragile group of people. And I think, as a leader, you may want to say that this is a spiritually significant moment, this emerging, and we want to treat it like a spiritually significant moment. And so therefore, I want to look at the heart of this and say, what theologically do I want my families to know about this moment that I want kids to feel prepped for? So if we pull up the chart again and look at the sort of this thing, Becky, can you take a screenshot of this before I delete it? Because I'm just going to delete. So if we look at this and say, okay, it's not communion, but let's look at emerging, fragile families emerging spiritually. And so if we look at that, if you are coming from a view of, listen to that other one about the pastoral care of them. But if we look and say it's a spiritually significant moment, theologically, I want kids to know, who is God in change? What does he do when things are changing? Who is he? What is he providing? What is he doing? Is change a bad thing? And where is God in that? Relationally, I want them to know how to talk to God about change and process with God their feelings about it. And sometimes kids don't feel like they know how to chat to God about it because they don't have words for it. So how can I provide them ways of relationally connecting to God and connecting with others about it, providing that community? And how do we spiritually equip parents? I think it's next month or maybe 2 months from now, we're doing a Facebook Live for parents that is how to help children love church again. And for parents, I think, okay, we need to, how to help kids love church again is something that we felt was something that parents needed to be spiritually equipped to do. And for kids to talk, for them to process why church, I think might be really helpful. And where is God now in that? And practically just sort of keeping them safe about, communication about what it will look like. And then you could fill in the chart from there. And so you may want to take those two things. The pastorally, how do we just wrap around parents and help them and hold them? And then this whole thing of going, for our specific church community, we think they're really fragile. So we don't just want to throw open the doors. We want to help them take that step, and feel free to do that. Can be a perfectly valid thing as well. And so I would suggest you sort of do both if that's what you're in the situation. You're the only one who can see it. You're the only one who knows whether it's pastoral care they need or equipping to get out of it, or a little bit of both. Right. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, ponderings, heresy flags, situations you're in. I'm really intrigued to learn from you what you're doing and how you're doing it and what comes out of this. And so as you do this, I think this is what we kind of want to share with each other. And that's what this group is for too, to be able to do that. And so as you create stuff, feel free to pop on and say, hey, I was thinking through this stuff, and I think this is how I problem solved the communion things, and this is how I thought about this. And so feel free to use this as a place to sharpen it, or to go, you know what, I want to prep for grief and I don't know where to start. Help me work through this chart. What do I want to do this? And use this group as a place to brainstorm and refine your thoughts. Because if you can get that sharpness, and then you can figure out your IKEA stuff around it. Right, well, I don't see anything else popping up. And so I will go and pray for you guys. If something else pops up as you think about it, as you comment on it, as you watch it later, feel free to comment on it, and I will drop in a video to sort of answer any questions or write answers. This isn't an ending of a conversation. But I'll pray for us, and I'll do one final check, and then we will head on off. So God, thank you so much that you have called us to walk alongside children and families in spiritually significant moments. And God, I pray that you would just sharpen our eyes, that we may see really clearly what you are calling us to draw these children and young people into, that we may equip these families, that we may create space for these children to encounter and love you, that we may walk alongside these children and their families and their communities so well that they may take these big steps through these big moments significantly and weightily and joyfully, that this may be, these big momentum builders of their faith and life. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, we got some more stuff. Looking at baptisms in upcoming months, how do we help everyone connect relationally when social distancing is still in force? Yeah, that can be really hard, really hard. Because if social distancing is still in force, then we're denied the physical connection of things. And I think in some ways, for me, it's about thinking through love languages. And often it just means creating new structures. And so for us, when you see a new baby and you're like, yay, baptism, and it's all about, let me hold the baby, let me touch the baby, and let me stand really close to you. And it's that relational, physical feeling of being together. And for people whose prime love languages are, touch, that's a tough one. But I think often it's about facilitating a community who then learns how to connect that thing with each other in different ways. So for instance, one of the baby baptisms I did, we had a book, or regular baptisms, we do this for anytime someone gets dunked, no matter how old you are, is to create a book that the congregation members can write, like words, verses that are significant, prayers for the person, memories of, I remember the first time you read the Bible from the front of church, and I remember crying because I just really felt God, thank you for your ministry, looking forward to whatever, doing. And to train a congregation so that they may not be able to touch the baby, or they may not be able to stand next to you and give you a hug at your, full immersion baptism, but they'll be able to write something down that you can take away with you, or a picture. I knew one church that did a picture of like a tree. This is a tree, and everyone there came forward, and there was just little ways of like inking your finger and then coming up and putting a thumbprint on it, so that they would send home a picture with thumbprints of the entire congregation making a tree that were leaves, to say we are with you, and you're surrounded by a community. And so that's a gift, a physical way of doing something. But there's the words of affirmation, writing it down. There's the quality time of being able to, even though they can't see each other, to play a quiz together from the front, or to organize some sort of social that means that they can't socialize in groups sitting on chairs, but they can sit around and enjoy something together or laugh together. Sometimes just the feeling of laughing together and seeing each other, everyone's sending in pictures so that everyone can see through the years, baptisms, and who had the craziest baptism gown or whatever. You have so many different ways of fostering relationships between the generations. And often I find that the love languages help me in that, the acts of service. Even if you're just getting baptized, the idea of giving money or giving food, or knitting. Oh, I knew one church community that had people knit different bits, different squares, and pray for the family as it was happening. And so then they sewed it together and then presented this church with a blanket of prayer, and that this parent, whenever the parent was really exhausted, would wrap herself in this sort of huge blanket of the prayers of her congregation as she would walk the baby. There was a particular medical issues with the baby, and they would wrap themselves in the prayers of their community. So there's so many different ways of piecing that together that can be really useful. So think through how we can do that to facilitate the idea of love, of feeling loved, because we can't replace the good old-fashioned nature of playing together. But there are lots of ways to play together, lots of ways of expressing love and feeling seen that can be helpful. Right. They're trying to, my team is trying to upload that thing, but it's not letting you. They're trying to screenshot it. They're working on it. You'll have something of the chart at some point to do that. I don't see any other questions popping up, so I will let you go. Know that you're loved. I can't remember what we're doing next month, but keep connected to us. Keep adding in your thoughts on this, because I know you guys all are doing amazing work, and I really want us all to learn from each other. But in the meantime, know that you are loved. We are praying with you. It is shared on the group now, so you have the chart there for you if you want to take it and work it and have a think. And I'm always here to help. I'm always praying for you. Bless you, and I will talk to you later. Bye.